Dr. Marcus Webb had what you might generously call an ego problem. Standing in the scorching desert of Keth Moran with sweat dripping down his face, he was absolutely convinced he was about to crack the linguistic mystery that had stumped every translator in the known galaxy. Because that's what humans do, right? We show up fashionably late to the party and somehow solve everything. I'm telling you, it's a variant of pre-collision Valdorian script, Webb announced to his long-suffering research team, gesturing dramatically at the massive stone tablet they'd just uncovered. The thing was the size of a small building, covered in intricate symbols that seemed to shift and dance in the desert heat. Professor Kulix, a four-armed scholar who looked like someone had crossed a praying mantis with a very anxious librarian, immediately began flipping through his regulation handbook. Dr. Webb, I must remind you that Galactic Archaeological Protocol 47b strictly prohibits unsupervised interpretation of unknown ancient texts without proper. Oh, come on, Kulix, interrupted Zara, their purple-skinned engineer who was currently trying to get their scanning equipment to work in the electromagnetic soup that surrounded the ruins. Let the man embarrass himself. It'll be entertaining. Captain Thorne, their military escort, just sighed and checked his weapon for the 15th time that hour. He'd been assigned to this mission as a routine protection detail, but something about this place made his tactical instincts scream warnings. The ruins were too perfect, too intact, and the energy readings were off the charts. Look, I've spent 3 years studying the linguistic patterns of pre-spaceflight civilizations, Webb continued, completely ignoring the fact that everyone was looking at him like he'd just announced his intention to juggle live grenades. The syntax structure here is clearly ceremonial, probably some kind of blessing or dedication, completely harmless. Klux's four arms were now frantically page-turning through 3 different regulation books simultaneously. Dr. Webb, the energy signatures from this site are highly irregular. Perhaps we should wait for the xenoarchaeology team to arrive with proper containment protocols. Containment protocols? Webb laughed. Klix, it's a rock with some old writing on it. What's it going to do, file a complaint with the Galactic Council? Famous last words, as they say in the business. Webb approached the tablet with the confidence of a man who'd never met a dead language he couldn't resurrect. The symbols were unlike anything in the standard databases, flowing and organic, almost like they were meant to be spoken rather than simply read. Okay, based on the phonetic patterns, I think it starts something like Keth Moran Zal Thara Nex Vuin, Webb began, his voice echoing strangely in the desert air. Dr. Webb, Kulix squeaked, perhaps we should. Shaish, I'm getting somewhere, Webb waved him off. The conjugation pattern suggests, ah, here we go. More dan kalarthex null vorthe k. The ground beneath their feet gave a little tremor. Webb paused, looked around at his team's increasingly alarmed faces, then shrugged. Seismic activity. Totally normal for desert planets. Zara's equipment began beeping frantically. Webb? My sensors are picking up massive power fluctuations underground. Like weapons-grade massive. Probably just residual energy from the ancient civilization, Webb said dismissively, turning back to the tablet. Now, this next part is interesting. The grammatical structure suggests a command form. Vel tarmox hul drinar thek zul van. The tablet began to glow. Not a gentle, mystical glow. More like the kind of glow you see right before something explodes and ruins your entire day. Webb, Captain Thorne said carefully, his hand moving to his sidearm, maybe we should step back and... Oh, this is fascinating. Webb was practically bouncing with excitement as the ancient symbols pulsed with increasing brightness. It's responding to the correct pronunciation. I think the final sequence is Morthak vel doom nexarthol vex halen. The ground didn't just tremble this time. It bucked like an angry bull, sending all 4 team members sprawling. Ancient machinery, silent for millennia, began to hum deep beneath the desert floor. The sound was felt more than heard, a vibration that seemed to resonate in their bones. Dr. Webb, Kulik said in a very small voice, I believe you may have just violated Galactic Archaeological Protocol 47B, subsection 12, paragraph 94, regarding the activation of unknown ancient technologies. Webb scrambled to his feet, staring at the now blazing tablet. I think, he said slowly, we might have a problem. That's when the sand began to part. The first thing that emerged from the desert was what could generously be called a nose cone. If nose cones were the size of city blocks and covered in enough weapon ports to vaporize a small moon. The sand fell away like water as the massive ship breached the surface, revealing a hull that stretched beyond the horizon. Oh, Webb said faintly. That's not a temple. Dr. Webb, Keelix's voice had gone up several octaves. I believe you have just activated what appears to be a buried warship of unknown origin and capabilities. More ships were emerging now, dozens of them, each one larger and more intimidating than the last. They rose from the sand like mechanical whales, their hulls gleaming with an oily, dark metal that seemed to absorb light. Weapon arrays that looked like they could crack continents tracked across the desert, scanning for threats. Okay, Webb said, his voice cracking slightly, so maybe it wasn't a blessing after all. Zara had managed to get her scanner working again, and the readings were making her face turn an even deeper shade of purple. Webb, these ships are reading as fully functional. And their weapons, oh, sweet galactic mercy, their weapons are charging. Captain Thorne was already on his comm unit, trying to reach their orbiting transport. Command, this is Ground Team Alpha. We have a situation. Multiple unknown vessels have emerged from... Wait, say again? No, I'm not drunk. Yes, they came out of the sand. What do you mean impossible? The largest ship, a behemoth that made standard galactic dreadnoughts look like shuttlecraft, had settled into a hovering position directly above their archaeological site. Panels along its hull began to iris open, revealing scanning arrays that bathed the team in beams of coherent light. It's scanning us, Zara reported unnecessarily, since they could all see the pretty light show. Wait, it's focusing on Webb. Me? Webb squeaked. Why me? Perhaps Click suggested with the tone of someone who'd just realized they were standing in a minefield, because you're the one who spoke the activation sequence. The largest ship's scanning intensified, and suddenly the air above them shimmered. A holographic interface materialized, covered in the same symbols that had been on the tablet, but now they were moving, flowing, rearranging themselves into what was clearly some kind of communication protocol. It's trying to talk to us, Zara breathed. Well, Webb said, squaring his shoulders with the kind of false bravado that had gotten him into this mess in the first place, I did just wake up their entire fleet. I suppose the polite thing to do is say hello. The hologram solidified into the figure of what was clearly a military commander from an era when warfare was considered an art form. The being was tall, angular, with features that suggested both nobility and the kind of tactical ruthlessness that wins wars. When it spoke, the words came out in the same ancient language Webb had been butchering, but somehow he understood perfectly. I am Admiral Koreth of the Eternal Fleet, the hologram announced. Who dares to wake the Guardians of the Void? Webb cleared his throat. Hi there. Dr. Marcus Webb, xenolinguist representing the United Galactic Archaeological Survey. The Admiral's eyes narrowed. You speak the command tongue, yet you claim to be a scholar. Are you the new fleet commander sent by the Council? Fleet commander? Webb's voice cracked again. I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. I'm just here to study your language. The command tongue is not studied, Admiral Koreth replied with the kind of patience reserved for explaining obvious facts to small children. It is spoken by those who would lead the Eternal Fleet against the Devourer threat. You have awakened us with the proper protocols. Therefore, you are our new commander. Behind Webb, he could hear Keelix frantically flipping through what sounded like his entire regulation library. Dr. Webb, The scholar whispered urgently. I believe you may have accidentally assumed command of an ancient military fleet. That's ridiculous, Webb hissed back. I don't know anything about commanding fleets. Your knowledge of tactics is irrelevant, Admiral Kareth continued, apparently overhearing. The fleet's AI systems will handle strategic calculations. You need only provide command authorization and target designation. Captain Thorne had finally gotten through to his ship. What do you mean orbital control is detecting massive energy signatures? Of course they're detecting energy signatures. There's a fleet of ancient warships sitting in the desert. Admiral, Webb said carefully, when you say devour a threat, what exactly are you referring to? The hologram's expression grew grim. The Devourers are the consumer race that sought to strip all life from the galaxy. We were built to stop them. Have they returned? Well, no, Webb said slowly. Actually, we've never heard of them. I think they might be extinct. Impossible. The Devourers cannot be extinct. They are the eternal enemy. If they were destroyed, the fleet would have received stand-down orders. Klix had apparently found the relevant regulation. Dr. Webb, he called out, according to Galactic Historical Archive 23 Alpha, there are references to a species called the Devourers that vanished approximately 12,000 years ago. 12,000 years? Webb stared at the Admiral. You've been buried here for 12,000 years? Time is irrelevant. The mission remains. We await your orders, Commander. Webb's day went from bad to worse when 3 separate galactic fleets dropped out of hyperspace above Keth Moran. The human colonial navy, the Altarian Defense Force, and the Galactic Council peacekeepers had all detected the massive energy signatures and assumed they were under attack. This is Admiral Harrison of the Colonial Navy, the comm crackled. Unknown vessels, you are in violation of galactic space. Identify yourselves immediately. Webb found himself standing in the command center of the lead warship, surrounded by holographic displays he didn't understand, and an ancient AI that kept asking him for target priorities. Admiral Kareth? Could you maybe not point all those weapons at the nice people? They approach in battle formation, Kareth replied. Standard defensive protocols require threat assessment. They're not threats. They're just confused. Like me, actually. Very confused. The comm system crackled again. Dr. Webb, this is Captain Thorne. The galactic fleets are demanding you power down those weapons or they'll consider it an act of war. Webb, Zara's voice came through clearly now that they were on the ship. I'm reading weapon signatures from those ancient ships that make our best dreadnought cannons look like water pistols. Maybe try explaining that you're not planning to conquer the galaxy? Webb activated the external communications array, hoping he sounded more confident than he felt. This is Dr. Marcus Webb, speaking for the Eternal Fleet. We're not hostile. This is all just a big misunderstanding. Dr. Webb, came Admiral Harrison's voice, you need to explain how you came to be in command of a fleet of unknown warships. Well, you see, I was translating some ancient text, and I may have accidentally activated a dormant military force that's been sleeping under the desert for the last 12,000 years. The silence on the comm was deafening. Dr. Webb, came a new voice, this one with the crisp authority of the Galactic Council. Are you telling us you personally activated an ancient war fleet? In my defense, Webb said, I had no idea that's what I was doing. That's when the long-range sensors started screaming. Commander Admiral Kareth said, his hologram flickering with what looked like excitement. Long-range scans detect Devourer signatures approaching the system. 3 vessels, bearing 127 Mark IV. Webb felt the blood drain from his face. That's impossible. They're extinct. Apparently not, Zara said grimly, studying her instruments. And Webb? They're big. Really big. The Devourer ships dropped out of hyperspace like nightmares made manifest. They were organic things, all curves and writhing surfaces, covered in what looked like mouths full of rotating teeth. Each one was the size of a small space station, and they radiated a kind of wrongness that made everyone's skin crawl. "Oh," Webb said quietly, "now I understand why you built such big guns." The lead Devourer ship immediately began broadcasting on all frequencies, a sound like screaming metal mixed with dying whales. According to the translation matrix, it was basically announcing dinner time. "All vessels, this is Admiral Harrison. We're reading massive biomechanical signatures. These things are unlike anything in our databases." Webb found himself in the strangest position of his life, coordinating a defense against an enemy that predated human civilization by millennia. "Admiral Kareth, can your fleet handle 3 of those things?" "Affirmative, Commander. The Eternal Fleet was designed specifically to counter Devourer technology." "Right then," Webb said, surprising himself with his sudden decisiveness. "All modern fleets pull back and provide support. Eternal Fleet, you're cleared to engage." The ancient warships moved with a grace that belied their massive size, their weapons systems coming online with a sound like the universe taking a deep breath. When they fired, it wasn't the bright lance of modern energy weapons, but something that seemed to bend space itself around the target. The first Devourer ship simply stopped existing. Not exploded, not destroyed, just ceased to be there. "Well," Webb said, "that was efficient." The remaining 2 Devourer ships tried to flee, but the Eternal Fleet's weapons reached across space to delete them from reality with the same casual efficiency. "Threat neutralized," Admiral Kareth reported, standing by for further orders. Webb looked around at the command center, at the displays showing a galaxy that was now safe from a threat it had forgotten existed, and at the ancient AI waiting for his next command. "Admiral Harrison, this is Dr. Webb. The immediate threat has been eliminated." "Dr. Webb," came the reply, "I think you and I need to have a very long conversation about your new position." "Oh good," Webb muttered, "because I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing." 3 months later, Webb was still trying to figure out how to command a fleet of ancient warships while Keelix had taken early retirement after a complete nervous breakdown caused by the paperwork that involved in registering 12,000-year-old military assets. Zara had become the galaxy's leading expert on ancient technology integration, and Captain Thorne had been promoted to liaison between the Eternal Fleet and modern galactic forces. Webb stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as human and alien engineers worked together to understand technology that made their best equipment look like stone knives. "You know," he said to Admiral Kareth, "I always told my students that dead languages were more useful than they thought." "The command tongue was never dead," the Admiral replied. "It was merely sleeping, waiting for the right voice to wake it." "Right," Webb grinned. "Remind me to put that in my next academic paper. How I accidentally became admiral of an ancient war fleet through poor pronunciation." And somewhere in the depths of space, other ancient systems registered the awakening of the Eternal Fleet and began to stir from their own long slumber. Because that's the thing about humans, they never just solve one problem. They solve them in ways that create entirely new and interesting problems. But that's a story for another day.